So, hello everybody. It is so glad to see you here. And it's really wonderful because I know that you all have a heart for God, and that's why you're here. And I'm going to do everything in my power to help you find more time for God in your life. Now, regardless of having created an hour-long presentation, the very first few minutes were the hardest for me to nail down. And that's because of a couple of things. Finding time for God is a time management issue. Plain and simple, it's a time management issue. And I've been learning what I've learned over the last 30 years. And so one of the biggest problems I had was, what of the last 30 years do I specifically share? And in addition to that, how do I share what I want to share without sounding like I'm bragging? And then I realized that you just want help. You want someone to help you find more time for God so that this year is different. And you don't specifically care if the information I share with you is 25 years old or if I sound like I'm bragging or not. You just want help finding more time for God. And I'm going to do that. Now, I've only been serving the Lord for the last 3 years or so, but the techniques that I'm going to share with you are ones that I have used for 27 years before that. I used them as a single parent of 4 that worked full-time, and I used them as a non-traditional student with anywhere from 2 to 5 kids at home, including newborns. So, for the sake of brevity, I will fast forward to my last year in graduate school, and it's a nice little slice of what life has been like. My daughter was working full-time at night, and so she had a 3-month-old and a 3-year-old. And I was in charge of watching them overnight. And we had this really cool thing worked out, and it really worked well. And that was, I would pick the kids up about 5:30, and I would take them to her house, and she will have gotten up about 4:30 or 5 o'clock and cooked dinner. And I took them to her house, and she would feed them and bathe them, and then I would go back about 7:30 and pick them up, about 7:30, right? And which time she would take a nap and get ready to go to work that night. So I had them overnight, and you know, I dealt with a baby teething. And not only that, but he was sick for the whole first 9 months of his life until they put tubes in his ear. So I dealt with a teething baby. I dealt with a sick baby. I dealt with getting kids up and getting them dressed and getting them to daycare so that I could get studying. And the same techniques that enabled me to do that will enable you to find more time for God. It just so happened that that's what I was using that extra time for. And you know, the techniques that I'm going to share with you today enabled me to be in the top 0.5% of university students nationwide. And I don't say that to brag, I'm just saying that because that took a lot of time. It took a lot of time for studying, it took a lot of time for research and writing papers. And as I said, that's what I used that time for. You can use it for more time for your kids, you can use it for more time for God or whatever. But I'm sure that you can appreciate that you can use these techniques to find more time for God. And this was my inspiration to become a speaker. This is one of the coolest kids you would ever want to meet. When he was 8 years old, about the time that picture was taken, we lost a precious, precious woman in the church. And we were sitting way in the back in a fold-out chairs, and people were coming up front, and they were saying nice things about Brenda. And I told him, I said, you know, you can go up there and say something if you want to. And he said, no, I don't want to, Ninny. And about a minute later, he says, I think I will. And I said, okay. So he come up, and he stood over there waiting to speak. And he come over here, and he's a real country boy. And he jammed his hand in his pocket, and he says, Miss Brenda was my Sunday school teacher. And I really loved her. And he said a couple more things. But he got almost, I can't remember if it was a standing ovation or just everybody just really applauded for him. But everybody, he was the hero of the church for like the next 2 weeks. It was the coolest thing. Do you remember that? But anyway, when I first felt the call to speak, I balked. I said, no, Lord, because I had done some speaking in college and graduate school, doing presentations. But as far as doing it, about non-educational things, I just couldn't see myself doing. And so I thought, no, Lord, I can't do that. And immediately he dropped into my head or into my heart, Corn Pop standing up there. And I thought that if I can do it, if he could do it to say some nice words about his Sunday school teacher, I could do it to be able to follow my calling, which is to help you find more time for God. So, why should we strive to make more time for God? I'm sure you have some ideas of your own, but here are some that I come up with. First of all, God commands us to study his word. 2 Timothy 2:15 says, "Be diligent to present yourself approved to God, a worker who does not need to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth." And the King James Version says, "Study to present yourself approved." Now that word study means to give diligence to. When it comes to the second part, how will we be able to rightly divide the word of truth if we don't know it by having studied it? Another reason is that spiritual growth is impossible without putting aside adequate time for study. 1 Peter 2:2 says, "As newborn babes, desire the pure milk of the word, that you may grow thereby." And you can look at some people now and in 10 years, or now and 10 years ago, and they won't have grown or matured spiritually a bit. I don't want to be that person, and I'm sure you don't either. And seeking God is at the heart of our closeness with him. Jeremiah 29:12 and 13, I love this. He says, "You will call upon me and go and pray to me, and I will listen to you. And you will seek me and find me when you search for me with all of your heart." Another reason is that studying God's word provides us with guidance for our lives. Ephesians 5:15 through 18 says, "Therefore, be careful how you walk, not as unwise men, but as wise, making the most of your time, because the days are evil. So then, do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is." And the second part of verse 18 tells us to be filled with the Spirit. Now, how will you understand what the will of the Lord is, or be able to be filled with the Spirit if you don't find time to spend with God? And Ephesians 6:10 through 18 teaches about spiritual warfare, because we must understand not only the enemy, but also the tools that we have to combat him. Because here's the thing, a soldier is no good if they forget to use their weapon, or if they don't know how to use the weapons, or worse, if they don't even realize they have weapons to use. We Christians have a lot of weapons that we can pull out. But again, that requires spending time with God and getting strong. And another reason is that someone's life may depend on it. And there's something called intercessory prayer. There was a time a couple of years ago when I woke up. It was over a period of about 2 weeks, and I woke up several times over this 2-week period. And I knew without a doubt that if I did not hit my knees in prayer, somebody was going to die. And Sean, I remember coming into the prayer team on Monday nights, and I remember talking about it, and Sean said, "That's intercessory prayer." And I had no idea, did not know what intercessory prayer was. So, hitting my knees, I knew without a doubt somebody was going to die if I did not do that. About 2 weeks later, my son called me, and he said, "Mom, I just left the doctor's office, and I wanted to let you know that they did certain blood tests, and they found out that I was dangerously close to liver failure." And I know without a doubt that had I not engaged in that intercessory prayer, he would have died. I know without a doubt. So another reason is we are to follow Jesus' example, and he thought it was important. If you can grab a hold of not only sincerely wanting to find more time for God, but actually transform that into action, your life and possibly many others will be changed forever. So, what exactly does finding time for God look like for you? For many people, it's attending services, attending Sunday school, corporate prayer, core groups, study groups, personal prayer, personal Bible reading, revivals, conferences, and attending other churches' special events. And I've done every one of those in the last year. So what are some of the obstacles? A lot of the obstacles include too tired. You know, it's hump day and it's middle of the week, you don't feel like going anywhere. Overdoing it on Saturday. Pastors talk about this a lot. Somebody was out working in the garden too much on Saturday and just need to rest and relax on Sunday. How about the inability to focus? Unprepared. Kids need baths, you haven't planned dinner and you're planning dinner when it's time to go to church, or homework. Or how about the day has just been too stressful? Also, there's too much to do at home. Kids' laundry, you know, midweek that has to be done, and that kitchen floor that was sticky the night before when you were watching TV just can't go another night without being mopped. And then there's always the guilt factor. Parents, especially moms, can count on the guilt factor. How can you have coffee and Bible study with laundry waiting? You kids need attention, and you can't shut the door to read the Bible. And reading an inspirational book just seems like an undeserved luxury. I want to tell you, every single one of these can be eliminated. Now, here is an overview of 10 things that will change your life. Even if you concentrate on a single thing each month, in less than a year, you'll have a completely different life, guaranteed. So we're going to talk about identify what's really important. Focus only on the important things. Don't do what you can and should delegate. Plan whatever you can in advance. Always be prepared. Identify stressors and zap them. Identify time wasters and eliminate them. Find your best time to concentrate and focus. Plan your time diligently and eliminate guilt. I love, love, love this picture because my heart is in the mountains. But you know, when we think about solving problems, especially ones that have been with us for a very long time, the road to success can seem as long as this road right here. And the mountains, our problems can seem as big as those mountains, as insurmountable. And I'm here to tell you that they're not. Because when you keep your goal in mind, one single step at a time can help us travel that long road and climb the tallest mountain. And I'm telling you, if you start at the bottom and you take one step at a time, it is physically impossible for you to stay at the bottom. You have to go somewhere. And the same way, if you take one step towards eliminating those problems that we identified, you can't stay at the same plane this year. You can't. You'll have to make progress. So the first one is to identify what's really important. Spending time with God, obviously, is very important, or you wouldn't be here. Now, how to focus on it is to remember the concept of first fruits. And I know that the concept of first fruits is normally associated with tithing, and that's correct, that's biblical. However, I believe that it also pertains to things like our time. If we give God our time, He will multiply it back to us. And He can do that by a number of ways. He can make things easier, tasks easier to accomplish. He can make a task just take less time than we thought it would, or as has happened several times with me, He can just take over and do the thing Himself. I've had Him do that many times. So, spending time with family and friends is another thing. We have time for what we make time for. Think about weddings, funerals, baby showers, whether they're convenient or not, whether they're planned or not, especially with funerals. We make time for them. And preparing well thought out meals. Our family's health depends on the quality of the meals that we feed them. And not only that, but they're building nutritional habits that's going to last a lifetime. And the reason that this topic is included in finding more time for God is actually twofold. Because when you are diligent in planning and finding solutions to the problems in this area, you can find more time for God. And the second one is when we don't find time, or when we don't plan carefully in this area, it can cause us to feel like failures. And then when we finally do get to where we can spend a little bit of time with God, we're so busy repenting because we've fallen down on the job again and fed our family hot dogs or cereal or something from not being more prepared. And either way, both of these can have a definite impact on your spiritual growth. Now, another really important concept is to teach children responsibilities. And you can focus on that because you can realize it takes a little bit of upfront time, but the rewards will last for years and years and years. And investing your time in the right areas. Time spent in planning and teaching is time well spent. My children were all doing their own laundry and cleaning their own rooms by the time they were 8? And in reality, they actually started that process when they were about 4. So who would agree with me that those 5 things are pretty important? Spending time with God, spending time with family and friends, preparing nutritious meals for your family, teaching children responsibility, and investing your time in the right areas. Those are pretty important. And this is an example of what children can do. The top left one is my grandson when he was 3 years old, had just turned 3, and he wanted to help Nini, and he just grabbed that basket and just started folding. The top right-hand one was also a 3-year-old who was helping take out garbage. And then you have my little cook helper there. She was maybe 8 or 9. And then the bottom left-hand one, I got that vacuum and he immediately grabbed it and started vacuuming. And I mean, he was vacuuming very well. And he was only, 4 then? So kids can be wonderful helpers. Now, the second secret is to focus only on the important things. Once you identify something as important, it's not going to do any good if you don't put it in the importance and treat it as such. So spending time with God as one of your highest priorities each and every day. I was doing a Beth Moore study recently, and one of the things that really struck me was she was talking about that God wanted the Israelites to collect their single day's worth of manna because they needed to seek His provision each and every day. And that's the same thing with us. God wants us to seek His provision each and every day. Another thing is plan to spend time nurturing your relationships, because what isn't nurtured dies, plain and simple. That goes with plants, relationships, and yours and my spirituality. On the flip side, what you nurture grows, sometimes exponentially. And your family's nutrition should be very high on your priority list. And once you spend the time to create, say, like a weekly meal plan, it can be used repeatedly. And you won't ever struggle with that problem again. Another thing is, once you teach children to do chores, that's something that will stay with them for a lifetime. And it should be very high on your day's priority list. Because that old saying is true, a minute spent is an hour saved, especially when it comes to planning and teaching. And investing your time in the right areas automatically requires focus. And focusing this way, it takes TV and gossiping and a lot of other default behaviors out of the picture. And when you put God as the focus of your life, you can't help but find more time for Him. Now this is an awesome investment of a parent's time. This is less than 2 weeks after his 10th birthday. And that's what it turned out looking like. And, Nick does not normally just sit on the couch while her 10-year-old cooks. But, I thought it was so cool that I just had to include that. And if she's smart, which I know she is, she will really nurture this growing interest in cooking. So, secret number 3 is don't do what you can and should delegate. How much of what you do on a daily basis should be delegated? Chores like the kitchen and the bathroom cleanup, kids picking up after themselves, and basically anyone's laundry but your own. You know, the time that you spend currently doing these things that you don't even need to be doing could be redirected in 100 different ways. For instance, when I was a full-time employed single parent of 4, the time that the kids spent doing chores, and they did the majority of the weekly chore or the daily chores, but the time that they spent doing that I did not have to spend doing that, enabled me to go to all of their meets, all of their plays, practices, games. I was able to be really involved in their life, even though they were raised in a single parent home. And you know, you can also take that same time that you save on this and spend it towards God. It's just so happened that at that time, that's what I spent it on. Some of Saturday's deep cleaning should also be delegated. And you know, your spouse could help out with the kids' practices, etc. And cooking responsibility some evenings should and could be delegated. You know, it's part of growing up. In my time management and program, in my time management and cooking program, I talk about kids, especially teens, choosing at least one night a week to plan. They're going to be completely responsible for the meal. They're from planning to making sure that the ingredients get on the grocery list to execution. And I also talk about how to get them feeling more comfortable in that role. But they can do it. And not only that, but it'll increase their self-esteem, won't it? Yeah. And, you know, think about how much more time, not to mention energy, you'd have if you delegated a lot of what you are currently doing. And the same time could be spent on your spiritual growth. And it would be so much better spent than the comparable time that you're spending cleaning the bathroom. Now, secret number 4 is plan whatever you can in advance. And it's true what they say, a minute spent in preparation is worth an hour saved, which can be used elsewhere. Now, some things to plan around. Church, midweek church. While the Bible does not specifically say you have to attend church on Wednesday or whatever evening your church holds midweek services, it does say in Hebrew 10:25 that we are not to forsake ourselves the assembling together. Our spirit needs fed midweek. You cannot go from Sunday to Sunday feeding your body, and you should not go from Sunday to Sunday feeding your spirit. And, you know, we need that spiritual nutrition from the daily Bible study. We need that spiritual nutrition in between services. And because of that, the task for spiritual nourishment should not fall all on our pastor's shoulders on Sunday and Wednesday. We have to take it upon ourselves to collect our manna each day. And it just so happens that our pastors get involved on 2 of those 7 days. And finally, there's daily prayer. I just do not believe that you can be a strong Christian without a strong prayer life. I don't think it can happen. Now, some things to plan in advance. Since we can't make more time, we have to rearrange our lives and pull that time from wherever we're currently spending it that we could save it. As women with home responsibilities, these are some of the areas that we can pull the time from. And I actually have programs aimed at all of these, but right now I'll give you some simple changes that you can make in these areas that will free up time for you in this next year. Menus. You know, you can plan in advance that you'll make a quick meal on Wednesday. You can create a list of several to choose from to avoid burnout. And on Saturday morning, you can put a roast or a casserole in the oven for dinner or lunch on Sunday afternoon. On Monday evenings, I like to attend prayer evening or prayer service. So I like to plan in advance on the weekend, and I go ahead and cook something extra so that I don't even have to worry about dinner on Monday night. And cooking. You know, you could save time on cooking by doing leftovers or repurposing things. You can cook ahead on the weekend. You can pull something out of the freezer, or you can just get a rotisserie chicken if you're really running late. We do that often on Wednesdays. Cleaning. As women, the way our houses look is a direct reflection on us. Like it or not, women's movement or not, that's the way it is. And, because of that, many times we run ourselves ragged, trying to take care of everything, and in the process, pushing time for God into the if I find time category, and that's not where He wants to be. Laundry. I've always handled this task painlessly because of two things. One, I do not do anyone's laundry other than my own. And two, I do that task while multitasking. I know of someone who would spend all day on Saturday doing her and her teenage kids' laundry. That is absolutely bananas. I would never do that. And I'm not normally a fan of multitasking, but this requires such little time and effort that it can easily be multitasked. And if you plan these 4 things right, you'll have a lot of extra time to collect your daily manna. Let's face it, sometimes we just need a little extra time with God. Maybe you're having a bad day, maybe something's going on, you're going through a trial or tribulation, or maybe, as happens to me on occasion, I just feel a welling up inside and feel an intense need to pray. Whatever the situation, being prepared can help you find more time for God. And these are some of the ways that I personally stay prepared. I have dinners in the freezer. That can include some meatloaf, meatballs, spaghetti sauce, or lasagna. I keep an inspirational book with me at all times. I always have a book with me in my purse, at least one. And I have read complete books this way. There are Bible apps for your phone. If you're, too modern for a book, there are definitely several apps. Mindomo. I outlined a book by using Mindomo while waiting for my grandchildren. And, you can look for ways to incorporate learning into everyday activities. I use scripture note cards, and I have them by different topic. I have defeat, worry and fear. I have material needs, wisdom and guidance, comfort and strength. And, I use little small snippets of time to really let that stuff sink in. For instance, we have a cat who is like 16 years old. He has 4 teeth, so he has to eat the soft cat food. Well, the dog likes the soft cat food much more than the dog likes the dog food. So I kind of have to guard the cat while he's eating. And a lot of times I'll just flip through these, and you can get a lot done in just a few minutes a day like that. And a thankful list. I have had thankful lists at different times in my life, and they're really wonderful because you can so quickly pull it out. And we have so much to be thankful for, but our minds can only comprehend so many things at one time. And if you keep a thankful list, it can grow over time, number one, but also you can see things that you were thankful for 5 years ago that you wouldn't even normally think about if you didn't have that list. And it's really cool seeing where you were maybe 5 years ago versus where you are now and how far God has brought you. And at the same time, you can see the doors He's opened, the doors He's closed, and you can just see how He has worked in your life. And I'm going to tell you something, if you need something to be thankful for, that will do it for you. That is a very serious way to grow spiritually, is just to stay in that thankful zone. Now, secret number 6 is to identify stressors and zap them. Stressors include anything that takes our time and attention away from focusing on those things that we have identified as important. And I'm going to take the same 5 things that we identified. feeling like you don't have time for God, but knowing you need to. Missing your family and friends and being tempted to miss church to spend time with them. I've personally had friends who were going to come to church with me, but they didn't because they wanted to spend time with their kid. Also, continuing to suffer from mealtime madness and the resultant feeling of failure, not being prepared for meals. I can do it better and faster by myself. I think every parent, other than me, has suffered from that. And not wanting to take the time and the energy to spend the upfront time to create menus, teach a chore, etc. Because it does take upfront time. Getting your life straightened out so that you can find more time for God, like I said, you're going to have to pull that time from somewhere, so you're going to have to do some rearranging, and it's going to take some work. But these stressors and more will really interfere with you being able to find God. And once you put in the very little bit of time necessary to get them straightened out, you will free up many, many hours that you can then spend on your spiritual growth. Now, secret number 7 is to identify time wasters and eliminate them. Because I'm sure you can tell that the first step in fixing any problem is identifying it, and the next step is to create solutions. Some of the biggest time wasters that I have seen are cooking every night. I would never, ever do that. I mean, what I do instead is I cook only a few times a week, and I do that by cooking ahead, by using leftovers, repurposing, or using freezer meals. Not bulk cooking. It takes very little time to brown 2 pounds of hamburger than it does 1. It takes very little time to double the sauce when you're cooking spaghetti sauce, and then to either freeze the extra or to make lasagna or whatever. Not smartly multitasking is another problem. And you could take that wasted time and energy while you're cooking to do your laundry. That is a big time saver. And one of the biggest things I can think of is trying to do everything yourself. This is probably a major area that you could save time on. Not handling errands efficiently. This can cost you literally hours each week. I timed it one time, a trip to Walmart 5 miles away for a forgotten ingredient. 15 minutes each way, because I live in the city, 35 miles an hour. So 15 minutes each way is 30 minutes. By the time you park, walk in, get your thing, and check out, that's another 15 minutes. That's 45 minutes for one single trip to Walmart for a forgotten item. And if you do that twice a week, which I have known people to do, that is an hour and a half. And I don't know about you, but God could do a whole lot in my life in an hour and a half each week. He really could. Another thing is not asking for help from family and friends. I have had family and friends save me hours each week by picking up a child from practice, or taking a child to practice, or picking up something from the grocery store when they're heading this way, and thereby saving me a time. Not spending a little time now to save a lot in the future. It takes very little time to bring a 5-year-old in the bathroom while you're cleaning it and to show him how to do it. Gradually, you put more and more responsibility on him, and pretty soon he can handle the whole thing by himself. Paradoxically, as it seems, it's a big time waster to not take advantage of a learning opportunity like that. And standards too high and redoing things that are actually okay. Yeah, when a child is new at, say, cleaning the bathroom, you have to strike a delicate balance between lowering your standards yet still expecting their best. And never, ever, ever, ever redo it yourself after telling them good job. You will be shooting yourself in the foot, I promise. And that's because, number one, they will never strive to do their best. Number two, they'll feel like they cannot please you. Number three, they'll wonder why they should even try if you're just going to go in and do it yourself anyway. Number 4, they won't learn from their mistakes. And number 5, they won't believe you in the future when you say good job. So remember that the more time you waste on stuff like this, the less time you'll have for God. Number 8, find your best time and area to concentrate and focus. You probably know intuitively when you focus best. I've heard people say I'm a night person or I'm a day person, morning person. Some people don't, but we do change over time. But you need to respect your slumpy time of the day, or else you are dooming yourself to failure. I know my slumpy time is like 11 in the morning. That's my nap time. I am not ashamed to say it. I need my nap. And after 8 o'clock, I'm toast. I can't even read a book and comprehend what I'm reading. Plan mental activities for when you are most mentally alert. For me, and for some other weirdos, that's like when it's still dark in the morning. I'm not saying I always get up when it's dark in the morning, but that is my mentally alert time. And plan less mentally taxing activities for other times of the day. Around after 8 o'clock is when I've discovered Shark Tank. I love Shark Tank. That's a cool show. And, or watch an inspirational movie. But I do not even try to read anything. Now, plan any medications carefully. I take a seizure control medication. And as such, it causes me to be tired. And it also causes memory problems, like I mentioned before. But my sister and I were having lunch down at Pier Park, or dinner down at Pier Park one night, and she was, I got to get home by 7 o'clock and take my medication. And I had heard her say this for a couple of years, and I never really understood why. So I said, why? Because we were having a good time. We were bonding, you know. And I said, why do you have to leave so early? And she said, well, because if I don't take my medication by 7 o'clock, it won't be out of my system in the morning, and I'll feel groggy. And I went, are you serious? It had never occurred to me that my medication may be why when I woke up in the morning, 7, 8 o'clock, it felt like I had to take toothpicks and pry my eyelids open. And, you know, my kids can tell you I was a bear to get up. So I started backing my medication up by half an hour. And I found out that it took 13 hours to get out of my system. 13 hours. I had previously been taking my medication at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night because it made me sleepy and because, you know, I wanted to wait until as late as possible to take it. Well, when I started taking it at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, true, at 8 o'clock I'm toast, but by 5 o'clock in the morning, you know, I can wake up and I can get going. And so that is important to know because it won't earn you any brownie points if, when you finally make time for God, you're too tired to spend any time with Him or you can't stay awake and focus. So, secret number 9 is to plan your time diligently. Time not planned can and likely will be piddled away. And it's common sense. You can fit so much more into properly planned free time. And another thing is that who wants to spend extra time during the week preparing things in advance so as to free up time for God and then, due to poor planning, just sit around watching reruns? I mean, I've done it myself, and I'm not even a TV person. But this right here, diligently planning time, this is how people get their goals and dreams accomplished. You can study what God put on your heart to study. I know we went to a women's conference back in October, and the Lord really put it on my heart to really study out the fruits of the Spirit. And it's up to me to make time to do that and then to diligently guard that time. And I have so many books. I got down there that that this is diligently planning is the way you get those books read. And I have so many books. Look at my books, and these are on my to-do list. I have a couple of them read now, but yeah. So let's do a recap so far. We're going to identify what's really important, focus only on the important things, don't do what you can and should delegate, plan whatever you can in advance, Always be prepared. Identify stressors and zap them. Identify time wasters and eliminate them. Find your best time to concentrate and focus, and then plan your time diligently. Now I want to talk about the last one, which is a problem for so many women, and that is eliminate guilt. Because guilt can hack away at our mental and physical resources. But I want you to remember this. God convicts, Satan condemns. So conviction to spend time in the Word and in prayer comes from God, and this is good. Condemnation about the floor needing mopped or the housework needing done, that comes from Satan, and that is really bad. And it will derail your efforts at spiritual growth, guaranteed. Another thing is, as previously mentioned, if God thinks we should find time for Him, I think it's pretty important, don't you? And, if it's important, then why would you feel guilty about closing the door and telling whoever is on the other line or on the other side that you're busy? Personal growth is just that, it's personal. You must do at least a portion of it by yourself. So shut that door, bolt it, chain it, threaten whoever is on the other end of it that you will put them up for adoption if they do not leave you alone. And because once you've identified spending time with God as important, you've got to treat it like it is. And, remind yourself that the guilt is self-imposed and it is not valid. But you have to remember that even though it is self-imposed, it is still powerful. So you have to make efforts to overcome that. Also remind yourself that you are doing something of the utmost importance for now and for the future, for yourself and for your family. And also that you're being a wonderful role model. And if you make the changes that I suggest, which is getting your spouse involved, getting help from friends and family, getting your kids doing more chores and helping out around with the cooking, then you'll go a long way towards not having anything to feel guilty about. So, a few last words. While obeying God is essential to pleasing Him, did you know that it is possible to obey Him without pleasing Him? I know, weird, huh? If you're spending time with God because you feel like you have to, then that's the wrong reason. And the Bible Exposition Commentary, Volume 2, Volume 6, states that pleasing God means much more than simply doing God's will. It is possible to obey God and yet not please Him. Jonah is a case in point. He obeyed God and did what was commanded, but his heart was not in it. God blessed his word, but he could not bless his servant. So Jonah sat outside the city of Nineveh, angry with everyone, including the Lord. Our obedience should not be with eye service as men pleasers, but as servants of Christ, doing the will of God from the heart. The expositor, that was Ephesians 6:6. But the expositor goes on to say, how do we know what pleases God? How do we know what pleases an earthly father? By listening to Him and living with Him. As we read the Word and as we fellowship and worship and service, we get to know the heart of God, and this opens us up to the will of God. And isn't that what we all want? God allows steps in our lives so that we can help others up the same steps that we've climbed. Being a single parent wasn't God's will for me, and it wasn't His best for me. But He allowed me to make my own choices, which then came with consequences. However, He can use anything for good. And even when we mess up, He can use those experiences for good. Romans 8:28 says, "And we know that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to His purpose." So He is allowing me to use all that I've learned through the years and years of struggling to help others find more time for Him. And for that, I'm extremely grateful and anxious to obey. And I do that in a few different ways. But first, I want to talk about Jack Canfield. Y'all know Jack Canfield, Chicken Soup for the Soul? We actually have the same coach. And did y'all know that he was turned down by 144 publishers for the Chicken Soup for the Soul books? 144 publishers are kicking themselves still. But in his book, The Success Principles, How to Get from Where You Are to Where You Want to Be, says one of the great things about living in today's world of abundance and opportunity is that almost everything you want to do has already been done by someone else. Someone has already done it and left clues in the form of books, manuals, audio, and video programs. He goes on to say that for virtually everything you want to do, there are books and courses on how to do it. Better yet, just a phone call away are people who have successfully done what you want to do and who are available as coaches and consultants. When you take advantage of this information, you'll discover that life is simply a connect the dots game, and all the dots have already been identified and organized by somebody else. All you have to do is follow the blueprint, use the system, or work the program that they provide. And I have programs that are aimed at all of these areas to save time in the home. Menus, cooking, cleaning, and laundry, those are some major time wasters. And how to spend time on your spouse, your kids, your family and friends, and yourself. And then I have the home study course, which consists of all of those programs. And my special promotion for speaking engagement attendees is, number one, 20% off, but also they all come with the corresponding assignments, plus 1 month of free weekly coaching calls. And in closing, my purpose is to help you find more time for God this year. Because unless you make the conscious effort to change something, this year will be the same as last. And I don't think that you want that. So, any questions?
If you have any questions, visit my website at marysegers.com, and from there you can view my speaking topics, availability, and booking information. You'll also find out details about my programs, including the problems they can help you solve, such as saving time on the things you have to do like cooking, cleaning, and laundry, so that you can reinvest it on the things you want to do, such as spend more time with your spouse, your kids, your family and friends, and still have time for yourself and God.